Bienvenue! Welcome to our French lesson today. You might want to just take a few seconds to have a look at today's joke. The snail is looking at a roll of sellotape, sticky tape, thinking it's another snail, and says, Tu n'es pas allé un peu trop loin avec la chirurgie plastique? Haven't you gone a bit far with the plastic surgery? So the plan for today is we're looking at extending our answers for the photocard description. So this is one of the speaking tasks, but extending your answers, the way that I'm going to show you can be used for other answers as well. So I'm going to show you something called assassin phrases and what they are and how you can use them to develop your answers. For the photocard description, for the photocard question, so the questions that come after your describe the picture question. And you could also find these questions in your 80 to 90 words writing. Useful for other speaking questions as well in the unprepared conversation. So first of all, we're going to look at prepositions because we're going to need these for when we're practicing extending our answers. So we've got a, which can be used with jouer, meaning to play a sport. And most sports are masculine, so that's helpful. A plus le, because the noun is masculine, becomes au. So that means je joue au foot, I play football. Il jouait au basket, he played basketball. On va jouer au tennis, we're going to play tennis. Je jouerai au volley le weekend prochain. I would or I could play volleyball next weekend. So just that shows you that the preposition stays the same no matter which time frame we're speaking in. But that little preposition can mean different things too. So we've seen it as I play at football or I play at rugby. We don't really use that in English, do we? So we wouldn't translate it that way. We'd just say I play football, I play rugby. But we need to remember the extra words. But sometimes we do translate it because it means different things. So for example, je vais au cinéma, I go to the cinema. Il est aux États-Unis, he is in the United States. Je suis à la plage, I am at the beach. Elle est restée à la maison, she stayed at home. Okay, so one little word can mean different things and you need to work it out from the context of your sentence. So here is where you might like to pause and see if you can work out which version of the preposition should go in the gaps. So each time we're looking at the gender of the word that comes after it. So just after the gap. So for example, cinema is le cinéma. So we would need to say je vais au cinéma ce soir. So if you want to have a go at these, just pause and then you will see the answers on the slide. So here's if you want to check your answers. So or for masculine, à la, because it's la plage. And then we've got an example or a couple of examples of plural, like aux cartes, because it's cards, aux États-Unis, because it's the United States. That's also plural. And try and have a go at writing your own sentences about the cat. The cat is in the toilet, the cat is at the beach, the cat is at the park, and see if you can work out whether we need or the next or a you at la plural. A L apostrophe is in front of a vowel. So if you've got a word beginning with A E O I O U, it will be L apostrophe. Okay, so onto the photo description, which we're going to use we're going to be using those prepositions as well. So the description of the photo is marked for the top grade band. This is a lot of information is conveyed. Information is always conveyed clearly. Edexcel, the skills they're testing are exactly the same, but it's worded slightly differently. So if you look at the two different ones here, they actually mean the same thing. So we need to develop our answers and we need to make sure they're accurate and understandable. So we looking at this type of word. What sort of words are these, first of all? Régulièrement, quelquefois, normalement, rarement, souvent, toujours. So what sort of word are they? What kind of word, what type of word? They're all adverbs. So we need to make sure that we know a good amount of adverbs. It's something that a lot of people forget to include in their speaking and writing, but it's a really good idea. I see normalement quite a lot as an examiner, but it's usually the only one I see. So if you can get into the habit of using 2 or 3 different adverbs, then that's great. You can also use time phrases, like last week, every Tuesday, in the evening. So it doesn't have to be just these. Remember to say how often or when you do something. So here are the translations in case there are any that you didn't know. So see if you can remember them now to fill in the sentences. So sometimes I play football with my sister. You've got the first letter of each one. You've got number 3 and number 4 both start with R, so they could be interchangeable, but can you think of 2 adverbs that begin with R? So pause if you want to have a go at filling these in. And here are the answers to check, remembering that number 3 and number 4 could swap round. You could say je joue au rugby rarement and on fait de l'équitation régulièrement. Or you might have thought of some other words that began with that same letter. That's fine too. So when you're describing a photo, you will get a group of people. Okay, it's very, I don't think I've ever seen a photo. Maybe I've seen one practice one from an exam board that had one person in it. But you will get a photo with a group of people in it. And so you need to use they. They are doing this. And we can get sometimes caught out because we spend a lot of our time when we're practicing our French talking about ourselves using the first person. So just using je. So we need to make sure we know the endings of the verbs. Now, in your speaking, this isn't going to make a lot of difference because the third person, la groupe regards, the group are looking at, and il regarde, sounds exactly the same because we don't pronounce that ENT. However, if you are using an irregular verb, it might sound quite different. So make sure that you know all of the irregular, like the main irregular verbs. I'm talking avoir, être, aller, and faire as the main ones. There may be some others that would be useful too, because even when you're speaking, these sound very different. La famille fait, the family are doing some cooking, or ils font, they are doing. And again, when it goes back to a regular verb, it sounds the same. So for the speaking, you will make notes before the exam. You can write down some of your answers in advance in your 15-minute preparation time. And you won't get marked on whatever you write down. You hand in your notes at the end of the exam and they will be shredded, they'll be destroyed. So it doesn't matter how you write things down on there, but it's good practice if you're practicing this for the speaking to then think ahead to the writing, and that there you need to make sure that you're adding the ENT on the end for a third person plural verb, so that's with they. So how do we develop our answers? Because we know from the marking criteria that it's not enough just to say, here's some people on a photo. We need to develop our answers. So what does that mean? So one of the first things I'm going to do is say where I am. So I want to, I've got some friends here, but I need to say where they are. So I've put, there is a lot of friends. So now I've added in an adverb as well. In a park. Now, this might be, you might rather say au bord de la mer, by the seaside, à la plage, but as long as it could be true, this could be a park, this could be a natural park, couldn't it? So as long as it could be true, you won't ever get marked down for saying something that isn't obvious. So instead of just saying il y a des amis dans un grand parc, I put beaucoup d'amis and then dans un grand parc, just to add a little bit of interest. This isn't going to get you top marks though, although it is good practice to add adjectives and adverbs. But what we're really looking for is for you to develop your sentence more. And that is usually a very good way of doing this is using qui with a relative clause. So qui can mean who or which. So here we're going to say the friends in a big park who are doing something. Okay. So we're now going to use a verb after this, and this is where we need to remember the difference between using he or she and they, because here it's a group of people, so we need to use they. So we could, if we get stuck and we're not sure about how to say they're walking or whatever they might be doing in the picture, you might get a bit stuck sometimes depending on the photo. You could say what they are doing, as in, are they happy? Who are happy? Yeah, so we can talk about their feelings if we get stuck. So this is just a little pointer that if you look at a picture and you can't think how to describe what they're doing, tell us how they are. Because pretty much always in a photo there's people smiling. So you can always use qui sont heureux or qui sont contents. Now you might have noticed I've got down here use three verbs. So at the moment we've got il y a, which counts as one verb. And then we've got qui sont, so that's the verb être. So that's a second verb. So we've got two pieces of information with a verb. But we really want three to make our sentence long enough. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a complex opinion to the beginning of the sentence. Now, complex might sound like something difficult to do, but it's really, really simple. You could say something like je dirais que. I would say that, yeah, because you don't know exactly who these people are in the picture, so it's absolutely fine to use that sort of phrase. As far as I know, I would say that, I think that, je pense que, il me semble que, it seems to me that, because here we've got another verb clause. I would say that. Okay, so now we've got our three verbs. So have a go at doing this one. So I've put autant que je sache, which means as far as I know. So have a little go at describing what's in the picture. So start off with what's the most obvious. There are some people and where are they? Then say what they are doing, and that will give you the three clauses. Here's an example. Autant que je sache, c'est une grande famille devant une grande maison. So I've got as far as I know, one. C'est une grande famille. There's our second verb. The rest of it's good. It's saying where they are. It's adding extra detail, but I haven't got my third verb. So try again with this one here and see if you can add three clauses. Okay, we used autant que je sache just now, as far as I know. These are what I call assassin phrases. In fact, they were called assassin phrases by another teacher. So that's not my invention. The idea is that these are really good sentence starters that add complexity to your sentence, and you just learn them as a sentence starter. The IV here, where it says plus IV, means infinitive verb. So apart from the first one, where you don't need to do that, but all the others, following on from this sentence starter, you would use an infinitive verb. So, for example, si j'avais le choix, je voudrais voyager en France. If I had the choice, I would like to travel to or in France. So voyager would be voyager. So it's the infinitive ending. So you can't all use all of these for the photo description, but you think about using that same idea of developing your answer to make your answers long enough for your speaking tasks and for your writing tasks using the same system. Okay, your basic sentence, but with a sentence starter at the beginning that's complex, and then using a relative clause afterwards saying who are doing this, which is doing this. You could use other words like where somebody's doing something. But there's a basic structure of how you put three clauses together. So we're going to practice each of these sentence starters. So the first one is, as far as I know, normally my brother plays rugby. So for each of these, there's going to be the answer on the next slide. So each time you can pause, write down your answer, and then check. So remember, we now need those adverbs we looked at earlier, and we need to remember our prepositions for things like plays at rugby. And here's our answer for that one. You may sometimes get something slightly different, which is also correct. So just contact me, send me your answer if you want me to check. So, autant que je sache, normalement, mon frère joue au rugby. Number 2, if I had the choice, I would like to play tennis often. So remember, each of the sentence starters is in this table. So then you need to look at to play, which is going to be your infinitive verb, and then at tennis often. The adverb can go in different places in the sentence. So here's your answer with souvent at the end, the word for often. Si j'avais le choix, je voudrais jouer au tennis souvent. You could say si j'avais le choix, je voudrais souvent jouer au tennis. Okay, so the adverb can go in different places. Number 3, if I have the time, I like to go skating. Here you need to remember that when a lot of the activities, the sports that we do that don't involve balls, the French use the verb faire, to do. But when we translate into English, it usually makes sense, or quite often makes sense, to translate it to go rather than to do. Okay, we can say to do skating, but I think to go skating sounds more English. So this is your skill as a translator. You can translate it literally and then say to yourself, does it sound English or do I need to tweak it a little bit? And sometimes, although we need it as close as possible to the original meaning, sometimes we're actually going to change the verb that we use. So, si j'ai le temps, j'aime faire du skate. Next one is, in order to play golf, I practice regularly. I think there's some of these phrases that are easier to use than others, and you might decide that you're going to try and memorize 2 or 3 of them that you think are the easiest ones that you could use regularly in your speaking and your writing. You can repeat these phrases between tasks because each task is marked separately. So you won't get marked down because you've used the same sentence starter in 2 different tasks. So, afin de jouer au golf, je m'entraîne régulièrement. So that idea of practicing, we have different verbs for it. So the idea of practicing sport is usually with the reflexive verb s'entraîner. You might have used the verb pratiquer, kind of works. S'entraîner is better. So je m'entraîne. I train, I practice regularly. Last Saturday, I decided to play tennis, table tennis. So samedi dernier, and then we've got up here the first part of it. So we just need play at table tennis for this one. Samedi dernier, j'ai décidé de jouer au tennis de table. I have to be able to always go cycling. So a little bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But again, it can be sound a little bit false sometimes, but it works, okay, in French, so that we're adding in that more complex language, because this one goes with il faut que je puisse, which is another subjunctive. The subjunctive it's a bit like a verb tense, but it's actually called a mood. It's seen here in autant que je sache as well. They are the subjunctive. You have to change the spelling of your verb depending on what you've used in front of it. So it's a little bit of a strange one. Normally you would only learn it when you do A level. You can learn these little phrases to add into your GCSE so that it's a bit impressive. You're using something a bit different. So this one is il faut que je puisse toujours faire du vélo. And the last one, we are going to have to practice sometimes. So the last one on our table, nous allons devoir pratiquer, and this is where I've used the different verb here for practice, quelquefois. We could use nous allons devoir nous entraîner quelquefois. Remembering s'entraîner, because it's a reflexive verb, we have to add an extra pronoun, which is why it's nous entraînons, or nous allons devoir nous entraîner quelquefois. So complex language there. It's easier to use pratiquer. Okay, So I hope that helped. If you want to send me any of your answers for me to check, so you might have written something slightly different and want to know if that's correct too, then please feel free to send me your answers. If you want to have a go at sending me your photo descriptions as well with the photos from earlier, I'm happy to look at those too. For now, a bientôt. Au revoir.